This video is brought to you by Skillshare, an online learning community with literally thousands of curated classes on everything from photography, film, video, and music, all in my sandbox, to web development, business analytics, entrepreneurship, and more. But the thing I really like about Skillshare is the breadth of the subjects it covers, allowing for the serendipity of classes outside of one's obvious focus to tie in beautifully with and expand upon what excites us. I'm talking about a creative whack on the side of the head by forgetting all about drool-worthy gear and instead taking a break, for example, to hone one's artistic voice. Try stepping back from the rote existence of our daily lives to create space to think, for example, with Ali Abdallah and Sam Ahmed's Stoicism Masterclass.
Stoicism is a school of philosophy that dates back to the ancient Greeks, and surprisingly, it's still super relevant in modern day life. Hey everyone, my name is Ali. I'm a doctor, YouTuber, and podcaster, and I discovered Stoicism around about 2015. And honestly, I think it's one of the main things that makes my life generally tranquil and generally pretty happy and chill.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam, the Stoic teacher. I'm a philosophy and theology graduate from the University of Cambridge, and I now have the pleasure of teaching philosophy and religious studies in London. Throughout the class, we've got lots of mini projects, worksheets, so that you'll be able to apply these principles immediately to your life, because it's one thing knowing things, it's another thing applying them, and that's exactly what we're going to teach you to do in this class.
Though I think it worthwhile to explore Epicureanism as it was originally conceived as an interesting counterpoint as well. Newbie or wizened pro, dabbler or deep diver, membership access to Skillshare's catalog of constantly expanding classes and workshops opens up a world of learning and sharing with your instructors and fellow members, ad-free and on your schedule, usually in under an hour for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So check them out. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership to help you explore your creativity. Thanks, Skillshare. This did not turn out the way I expected. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and today I want to share with you what I've learned about real-time tracking autofocus in video on Sony's a7C since my last video on the a7C just a couple of days ago. 1. I was dead wrong and I apologize. The a7C does indeed have real-time tracking in video. 2. I understand precisely why I got it wrong and in getting it wrong what I missed, so let's work backwards from that. A. It is a powerful feature with direct application to the kind of work we do, perhaps to your kind of work as well, in a package at a price and with a lens ecosystem to support it that makes the a7C uniquely attractive. B. It is anything but intuitive to set up. And C. In fact, it is a perfect illustration of how much of our mind share over the past decade has been rerouted from the intent and art of what we do to the tech of doing it, and why over the next decade I see industrial design, including the software interface and user experience, as the competitive advantages and primary redress against speculation. Before we go any further, however, I want to take a moment to thank those of you, dear YouTube viewers, who reached out in a constructive way in the comments to suggest that I might not have gotten it right. We love our community. And to thank both Sony Alpha Lab by Jay for creating the one video I found to be both on point and to the point on real-time tracking in video, and Michael the Maven for creating an incredible 3+ hour long free video course on the a7C that happens to include the one thing Jay's video didn't, which I wanted to understand. I'll include links to both of those videos in the show notes below. Guys, truly, thank you. So, let's get into it. The bottom line is that the a7C does not come from the factory with default settings for autofocus that you'll want for the use cases I'm about to share with you. More importantly, the logic of Sony's menu structure and navigation of it on the a7C is so convoluted, so cryptic, and too often simply dead-ended, requires so many steps, and relies on so many oddly named parameters, is so far from the way an actual practitioner, not already steeped in the Sony system, thinks, that in order to make real-time tracking AF work for you in video properly, you have to do this. I don't know about you, but this kind of futzing with menu systems is not the way I want to spend my time, especially because it wasn't just the time it took to run through the settings, it was the time it took to reach that point. Although I make no claims that this is the only way to get there, nor that there aren't other settings which are even better. The most important point, though, is however you get there, the futzing is worth it. The a7C passed our Brown Niso S56 slider test that at some point has made almost every other camera I've ever tested cry. Only the Canon R6 was as assured, the Nikon Z6 II surprisingly not far behind. It's not a real-world test per se, but it is repeatable, it isn't complicated, and it does separate the wheat from the chaff. The a7C passed our real-world whack-a-mole use case, known in Sony ZV-1 parlance, you might say, as product showcase, which, in this newly zoomed world of ours, has become an important function in my own streaming work. You know, like when I want to show people a product like this. The a7C passed our real-world lean-in for emphasis use case for videos, especially useful for Zoom calls like this. I think you know what I mean. And if you didn't, you do now. Between its compact size and lightweight with one of the new ultra-compact primes for gimbal use on the one hand, and the use of gyro data instead when even a small gimbal is too intrusive on the other, there's simply nothing else in the market quite like the a7C at anywhere near the price. Let me recap the process and settings you saw a moment ago and then provide additional insight. Set focus mode to continuous. Set focus area to wide. Set priority set in AFC to balanced emphasis. Set face eye detection to off. Set AF tracking sensitivity to 5. Set AF transition speed to 3 for a nice cinematic look. Usually, not always, haven't figured that one out yet. Set subject shift sensitivity to 5 so that the camera will move quickly between your face and the object you place in front of it. Most importantly, set touch operation to on. Set function of touch operation to touch tracking. Finally, go to the second to last tab on the right, the one that looks like a toolbox, and on the very first page of 6, the one labeled Setup 1, set monitor brightness to sunny weather. You want to do this because otherwise you won't be able to see the rear panel well enough in broad daylight to use touch tracking, which is critical actually because there are good reasons to leave your small HD Focus or Ninja 5 at home. We own both. Breathe, Hugh. Breathe. When you connect any monitor to the a7C, and I've had both of these things happen to me now over the past 24 hours, it's not like I read this in a manual. 1. Even though the a7C will drive the monitor and the rear screen, if you shoot in 4K, you lose real-time tracking autofocus. Unbeknownst to you until you check, the camera will automatically switch to touch focus and gray out the touch tracking option. 2. Further, again, if you shoot in 4K, your monitor will only show clean HDMI out. There is no way, for example, to check audio levels, shutter speed, or any other information there, though you'll still be able to see this information on the rear screen. Unbeknownst to you once more, when you check to see what's happened, you'll see HDMI info is simply grayed out. But you probably want that monitor because, well, it's a monitor, and the screen on our Ninja 5 is vastly more legible and roomier than the rear panel, especially in bright sunlight. 3. If you choose to shoot in full HD and turn on HDMI info thinking this will solve the problem, forget about it. The camera will simply gray out HDMI info as an option, which at least maybe makes sense, kind of. Because at that point, the rear screen goes dead and the output is rerouted to the monitor, strangely but usefully enough with info display on. But again, you lose the ability to set the tracking point. Unbeknownst to you, the function of touch operation is also automatically grayed out. This kind of hidden rules and exception game is a whole different kind of whack-a-mole, only now you're trying to figure out what is the combination of parameters that will allow you to do what you want without dead-ending in an incredibly frustrating and opaque, this function is currently disabled or this operation or setting not available as follows. It's like someone saying, close your eyes and hold out your hands. You do it, and that person places a nice steaming pile of in them and walks away. I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? How hard can it be to include an onboard manual organized by use case? How hard can it be to include onboard tutorial videos? If that's too much, how hard can it be to put all of the autofocus parameters in one place, even if it results in some redundancy in the menu? And don't tell me function of touch operation isn't part of autofocus. It is an essential part of it. Then again, I well understand that just because one lonely voice wants this stuff doesn't mean there's a business case for it. Clearly, there is not. At least, not yet. The consolation prize for all of this futzing, beyond the outstanding, not perfect autofocus performance, is that there are a number of shortcuts you can create to access these settings with less futzing the next time. And you should. I don't care how familiar you become with your camera, this is just too much to have to set up each and every time. Thus, you can customize the function menu so that a number of these autofocus parameters are addressable with a single button press. Save a number of these autofocus parameters in the My Menu tab, and or use the custom memory settings on the top side mode dial. Bammo! Whenever you want to shoot a particular use case, switch the mode dial to that number and you are good to go. All of the parameters, as far as I could tell, properly set. The mode dial approach is really helpful for other use cases. For example, when you want to switch between 4K 24p for talking head videos like this and 1080 24p for Zoom meetings where bandwidth is a real issue. Though, remember, the same rules for monitors apply to a Zoom meeting or any other streaming platform because in either case you're using the HDMI port. Unless you're not, because you're using Sony's Imaging Edge webcam capability via USB-C port, though then you don't have access to power, which doesn't work for us because there are days when I have hours of streaming and don't happen to have an extra battery. But yeah, that would solve the problem too. I want to wrap this up with something completely different, but I promise I'll tie it up in a nice bow for you before we're finished. This is the legendary 35mm Leica 3A. Yeah, that was pretty good autofocus, quick, smooth. From the a7C I'm shooting with again today, made it to the Zeiss 55 1.8 set to APS-C/Super 35 mode, which also explains the focus breathing. This particular 3A was manufactured in 1938. Once you load the film and extend the lens, there are only 6 things you can do with it. Well, other than collapse the lens, replace it with a different lens, slide in an optional optical finder to the cold shoe, or unload the film, set the shutter speed, set the aperture, set the framing, set the focus, trip the shutter, and wind to the next frame. Now, this is another legendary camera, this time a movie camera, the 1970s era Super 8 Brown Niso S56. It has about the same number of things you can do with it as the Leica, though of course you can also change the frame rate and zoom the lens. And then there's this, the iPhone. This one happens to be an 11 Pro. Whether this particular version of it is ultimately forgettable or not, the iPhone has already established itself as yet another icon, perhaps the first photo-video hybrid in that category. It can capture photos in bursts at 12 megapixels. It can record up to 4K 60p 1080 240. It can record slow-mo, time-lapses, panos, simulate shallow depth of field computationally. It can do HDR. It can record audio in mono or stereo. There's not a video recording limit I've ever bumped up against recording at 4K. It has 3 built-in lens sensor units in the front, 1 in the back, and an incredibly powerful processor with brilliant software that can knit them together to make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. While it doesn't have an EVF, it does sport an almost 6-inch diagonal screen with a 2.7K full HD display, brilliant in bright sunlight until, once it hits a certain internal temperature, it dims. Oh well. It has a surprisingly usable built-in flash when your subject is close and ambient light is low. And the phone itself, I think, is gorgeous, from its hardware to its software, in a package that weighs less than 190 grams, less than 7 ounces. Its complexity is reduced to and hidden by a single, brilliantly clear on-screen page consisting of just 10 parameters, all set by a tap or a swipe, and on-screen controls at the point of capture, again, accessible with a tap or a swipe, consisting of a single software button for stills or video capture, a single control for selecting focal length, a software switch for flash settings, a software switch to turn on or off live view, and a hidden set of tools revealed with swipe to control exposure, aspect ratio, initiate a self-timer, or select what we might call LUTs or presets, looks. The points I want to make are these. First, the number of things one can change on a film camera from the last century, stills or movie, is less than the number of things we just fiddled with for autofocus alone on the a7C. Back then, all you could do for focus is turn a mechanical focus ring. There are reasons why Leica's M's, analog or digital, remain so popular. There are reasons why there has been a resurgence in interest in film cameras. In both cases, I think, it is about the experience and purity of shooting with one, the absence of complexity, the joy of composition. No futzing with settings, custom function buttons, and menu diving. Just the pleasure of being in the zone, alert to the photographic opportunities, and being at one with one's gear. Second, while the capabilities of this one little a7C are nosebleed beyond what the 220th century specimens can do, the cost of those capabilities is, as I said at the outset, a significantly greater proportion of mind share directed to the tech rather than the art and craft of image making, with a correspondingly even smaller proportion directed to the joy of the process. That 0.39-inch, 0.59x magnification EVF is really dinky. More importantly, the most powerful and enjoyable films will continue being powerful and enjoyable, not because they were shot at 60 frames per second or 120 or 240 or even 1,000 frames per second, not because they were shot in RAW or 6K or 8K, not because they had a half-stop more dynamic range than last year's films. They will be the films we want to watch because of their narratives, their subject matter, and the artful ways in which both are conveyed. You can do that on an iPhone. It's been done. It was done on an iPhone 5 most recently, but my current benchmark for what I'm talking about is Nomadland. If you haven't seen it, do. Third, there are reasons why the camera industry has cratered. The general consensus among manufacturers, the conventional wisdom, is that smartphones decimated the point-and-shoot market and have eaten into the low end of the ILC market because of the A, no-brainer decision-making process. Hey, the camera comes free with the phone. B, it's the camera you always have on you. C, it's more than enough for the general public in terms of image quality. And D, it's brilliant for social media. True as far as it goes, but I believe this omits what are perhaps the most important reasons of all, and why failing to acknowledge them portends the doom of today's expensive, complex, and relatively large dedicated hybrid cameras. I repeat, industrial design and the user experience. Although I could be wrong. Clearly, I've been wrong before, and I will be wrong again. Which brings us finally to fourth, which is as incomplete a design as it is, combined with the features I actually need and not more. The a7C intrigues me. In fact, in spite of all of the futzing the a7C requires to use it the way I intend, it is so clearly worth it given its performance, price, compact dimensions, continuing momentum of the lens ecosystem for it, and given that this is the first clear evidence to me of intentional, laudable industrial design by Sony since the launch of the very first alpha cameras, that I am actually returning the XE4 we just bought and replacing it instead with an a7C with their new 50mm f2.5 ultra compact prime. Isn't that a kick in the head? This video was brought to you by Skillshare. Newbie or wizened pro, dabbler or deep diver, membership access to Skillshare's catalog of constantly expanding classes and workshops opens up a world of learning and sharing with your instructors and fellow members, ad-free and on your schedule, usually in under an hour for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So check them out. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership to help you explore your creativity. Thanks, Skillshare. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, join the conversation below, because this is an incredible audience. If you'd like a copy of our Streets of New York, the book, head over to www.3bmep.com/books. If you'd like to schedule a one-on-one video session with me for a portfolio review, explore or hone your artistic voice, select gear, and more, sign up at www.3bmep.com/booking. Finally, consider supporting our work by using our no-cost-to-you affiliate links down below, picking up some official Three Blind Men and an Elephant swag at 3bmep.threadless.com, sending coffee money via PayPal, or best of all, join us as a patron over at Patreon. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.